Hi guys, welcome to chapter 10. We're going to start talking about animals finally. So we're going to cover section A today of chapter 10, okay? So, animals. First of all, a zoologist is the type of scientist that is in charge of studying animals. It's a part of biology though, but you can have a more specialized field, which is zoology. All animals are eukaryotes, remember, meaning they have a nucleus, okay? They are heterotrophs, they're consumers. They have to consume food to get energy. They can't just make their own energy. Most animals have cells that are very specialized. There are single-celled animals, okay, and there are some very simple animals that don't really have specialized cells, but the majority of animals do have some cells that act as nervous tissue, some that act as more of like a circulatory kind of specialty, reproductive cells, things like that. So most animals have those kind of specialized cells. Most animals move at some point in their life cycle. There's some very simple sea creatures that don't move, but most of them are mobile at some point. And most of them reproduce sexually, meaning they need two partners. They get DNA from two different parents. Okay. So this little creature over on the side there, if you were to look at this guy right here, you might think that that was some kind of an underwater plant, but that is actually an animal. It's actually a type of sea star. It's called a crinoid, and those little feathery arms actually move and collect food, and so it does eat. It reproduces sexually. That is actually considered an animal. So some of them don't look like what we expect. Okay, so since there is such huge diversity in the animal kingdom, scientists need to be able to classify the animals into different groups, and they look at certain things in order to classify these animals. One of the things they look at is the symmetry of the animal. Okay, symmetry is basically like if you can cut something in half and it's an identical. If and this is kind of in order from most complex up at the top down to least complex down at the bottom. Okay, that's a horrible arrow. There we go. Okay. So the least complex would be an asymmetrical animal. It has no line of symmetry. You can't draw a line to cut it in half. Radial symmetry, there's multiple lines of symmetry. So round animals, that's an example of a polyp. That's one of the types of sea creatures that doesn't move. It has multiple lines of symmetry. Most animals, as we get more complex, have what's known as bilateral symmetry, meaning there's just one line. If you look at a human, there's just one line right down the middle that you could cut and have identical halves. Not top and bottom, but right down the midline, it would be called. Okay. We also look at the heads. Not all animals have a head. If you look at that sponge over there, there's no head. So that is the fancy word for that. I forgot the other parentheses. Is called cephalization. This kind of root word, cephal, means head, I think in Greek, I'm not sure. And so if an animal has a lot of its sensory organs kind of collected on one end of its body, that's kind of seen as a head. And that's also a sign of increasing complexity. If you think of most of the animals you're familiar with, they have a distinct head, okay? But not all of them do. And then finally, the guts. The guts is actually a kind of a scientific term to talk about the digestive system. Some animals actually have two-way digestion. So what that means is that the food would go in, it would be, processed, and then the waste would come out the same location. That's known as a two-way digestion. That is not as complex as one-way digestion. So this beetle here, the food would go in this direction and then come out the opposite direction. That's one-way digestion. So a complete digestive system would be considered this one way, okay? And that is more complicated than a two-way digestive system. All right, we also look at just the type of body cavities an animal might have. Some animals have kind of a hollow area in their body that holds their organs. Animals, humans certainly do, mammals do. In humans, we have a chest cavity for our respiratory and circulatory organs, and then we have an abdominal cavity for most of our digestive organs, okay? That's the more complicated animals. Some, it's just the body is the body, and it just functions, and there's no clear separation of organs or those specialized cells. Okay, it's a very basic animals. Scientists also look at the presence of a backbone or not. Okay, we're gonna in section B we're going to talk about invertebrates. In section C we're going to talk about vertebrates. Invertebrates do not have any kind of a backbone or this thing known as a notochord. Okay, whereas vertebrates do have a backbone that protects that notochord. So the notochord for us, it's our spinal cord. Okay, and it's basically just a flexible rod. And it's important to the animal, and so it's protected. Okay, some animals only have a notochord at a certain stage in their life; they don't have it their entire life. But if the animal has a backbone to protect it, it's known as a vertebrate. All right. Temperature control. We have ectotherms and endotherms. Okay. Most animals are actually ectotherms, meaning they need to get in the sun to warm up. They need to get in the shade to cool down. They rely on the environment to control their body temperature. We refer to those animals as cold-blooded. Even though their blood isn't cold, it just means that they can't control the temperature. Their blood will follow the temperature of their surroundings, and so they're constantly having to move. Whereas endotherms, like mammals being endotherms, we can actually regulate our own body temperature. You guys have had temperature checks every morning, and you probably recognize right around what your temperature is. Mine's usually 97.7 every single morning. Despite the fact that it's only 50 degrees when I get to work, my body temperature is still 97.7. When it gets really hot, 110, 105, whatever, my body temperature stays at that temperature. So our body does things to warm us up, and it does things to cool us down. We sweat when we're hot, and that helps cool us down. We shiver when we're cold because the movement of the muscles helps warm us up. So our bodies maintain that stable body temperature. So animals that are endotherms are known as warm-blooded because they can actually keep their blood warm despite the surroundings. Okay? All right, so we've got 9 main phyla. Remember we talked about taxonomy earlier. We have kingdom, and then we have phylum. Phyla is plural for phylum. There's 9 main phyla of animals. There's actually some more, but these are the main ones, and these are the ones we're going to talk about. This single phylum right here is the only phylum that contains vertebrates. All the rest of those phyla are invertebrates. Only like 5% of all animals are vertebrates, okay? Even though that's our most familiar type of animal, most animals are actually invertebrates. So next section, we'll talk about those first 8. We've got Porifera, Cnidarians, Platyhelminthes, Nematoda, Annelida, Echinoderms, mollusks, and arthropods. We'll talk about all of those next section, okay? See you guys then. Bye-bye.